Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bump of the Night podcast. This is your host, Dan. Joining me tonight is my co-host, Alex.
How's it going, legends? Everyone's awesome.
Thank you all for tuning in. Tonight we have a nautical mystery for y'all. Shall I get straight into the introduction?
Yeah, I'm excited to figure out what we're even talking about because I don't remember.
You don't remember? Okay, good. That's perfect. Because I told myself I was going to keep you in the dark for all these things.
I know.
But then I get really excited.
No, it's good. I completely forgot anyway.
All right, thank you. On December 15th, a ship, the Archtor, looking for safe harbor, passed by the lighthouse at Eilean Mor. It noted the beacon had extinguished. The captain and crew of the vessel, baffled, noted the discrepancy and passed it on to the proper authorities. Little did they know, they were the first witnesses to the greatest nautical mystery of their age, the Flannan Isles Lighthouse disappearances.
Oh, okay, I remember this name now. This it's come back to me slightly.
So this is actually a really fun one. I remember when I was younger and I was still kind of getting into a lot of the paranormal stuff. This was one of the first cases I'd ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
It baffled me when I was younger.
So
looking into it now, what was it?
Those are always the coolest ones when they make no sense.
Looking into it now, it's actually having a little bit more context is actually really cool.
Nice.
So, just some background on the area itself. I'm gonna go over just some quick, background stuff to get us up to date on what's actually happening here.
Yeah.
So for the location, it's the Flannan Isles, also known as the Seven Hunters Islands. It is a cluster of 7 islands, all the way in the North Atlantic Ocean. So
by Scotland, right?
Yes, yeah, it is part of Scotland, and way up north.
So it's very cold.
Yeah, so it's 21 miles west of the Isle of Lewis, which is already way up there, right?
So it's far from the far point. It's mega far.
Yes, this is out there. It's not even close to the mainland of Scotland at all.
Gotcha, okay.
So some of the islands actually used to be used by sheep herders. They would bring their sheep there for the day, let them graze, and then load them all back up onto a boat and leave.
That sounds like a lot of effort, but I guess you kind of have to. I guess you don't have anywhere to do it on the mainland in that area.
Well,
I guess.
Yeah.
That's very weird to me.
It still confuses me. I had heard that on some other podcasts that I listened to. I think this was also mentioned on on one of my sources, which was the Scottish records, the Scottish government records.
Oh, straight
office.
Up, just the records.
Yeah. It was used by sheep herders. The island itself, so the one we're going to be talking about today, because it's 7 islands, the one we're focusing on is Eilean Mor.
Yeah.
Which used to be, the island itself, it's a rocky kind of island, cold, extreme winds.
Mm-hmm.
The waves are insane. I believe, so it's a 38-acre island.
Okay.
How tall are the cliffs? I think here we are. The cliffs itself are 200 feet high, right?
Oh my lord.
The waves sometimes get so rough, they are able to go up the side of the 200-foot cliff.
You know what's funny? Recently I started watching Deadliest Catch again, and they're up in Alaska, and that's pretty much what they talk about all the time. They're I saw a boat, it got eaten by the ocean because the wave was 200 feet tall. That's crazy. I'm oh my goodness.
Yeah, dude, the ocean's a scary place.
It's horrifying, man. Dude, it's You're so at the mercy of just nature and the ocean. It's so horrible. You can't
don't worry,
do
it's
anything.
gonna get worse. So, um, the island itself, 200-foot cliffs, really highways. It used to be the home of the Chapel of Saint Flannan, which at this point had basically been abandoned. It was nothing more than just ruins.
Yeah.
It was pretty much the only point of any real human habitation on the island up until the actual construction of the lighthouse.
That's interesting, actually. So the church existed there before, like, huh? Like, so they had like a whole like group of. They had enough people on that island to put a church, or did they like find the island, colonize it, and then put a church down?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I think they just put up the chapel.
Because it'd be really funny if that island had like 2 people on it and they built a church for just the 2 of them. That'd be crazy.
I think that was the case, and those
that's nuts.
The priest
that's
and
dedication.
Yeah.
That's
so, as for the actual lighthouse themselves or itself, so the lighthouse itself is 75 feet tall.
So
actually, so really quickly, I just read this on my notes.
Mm-hmm.
The waves sometimes would actually reach the lighthouse itself.
Okay, that's a little horrifying. That's pretty wild. Oh my lord.
But don't worry, it was actually a really modern lighthouse by that point, because I think this whole event takes place in like 1901 or 1900.
That's the turn of the century, okay.
Yeah. So,
you know what's funny? I think that's around the time, I could be wrong, but I think that's around the same time the movie The Lighthouse took place, which is similar.
So actually,
except with less Lovecraft nonsense.
From what I heard,
madness, or maybe more.
That movie was actually kind of based off of another disappearance, but not this one.
Yeah.
This had no inspiration to that movie.
You gotta know that lighthouse keeper is not the most ideal job when there are multiple sea madness disappearances in history.
Well, that and I think the 200-foot waves.
Yeah, I guess location more than the job itself. Like, yeah, okay. Like if you're a lighthouse in like I don't know, Cape Cod or like something, it's probably super nice. But like,
look, I can't think of many people that would volunteer to sit on a cold, rocky, windy island with 200-foot waves out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean with like 3 people. It's just 3 people on that island.
And if you're lucky, sometimes it's just 2. Like in the Lighthouse movie, it's just 2. In some instances, it's just 1. You're just by yourself. In which case, geez.
At least for not this case. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
I just want to get past some other stuff. So the lighthouse itself was built in construction began December 7th, 1899. So it was actually a fairly modern lighthouse.
Oh, wow.
It was actually, all things considered, for the 1900s, it was actually pretty sturdy and pretty good.
3 years for it is pretty quick, too, considering the island's, like, weather patterns.
Yeah. The facilities were actually also pretty modern for the time. There was a crane and a railway, basically, so that you could unload cargo easily and move it around the island.
Nice. Wow.
So they actually had it made on Eilean Mor.
Yeah, they were.
If you can ignore the fact you're,
as
21 miles into the ocean.
Yeah, as comfortable as you can be.
Yeah. And to your point that you were mentioning earlier, so it's always crewed by 3 people. The whole crew itself were 4 people, but it would be shifts. So 3 people always at the lighthouse, with 1 person at the shore station, which was at, I believe, the island I mentioned earlier, Isle of Lewis. So they had a shore station at the Isle of Lewis, which is where the lighthouse keeper off his shift would stay, along with the families of the other keepers and other support staff.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so they basically had like a little town set up there
All
that
right.
the families would stay so that they wouldn't be too far off. And how they would do it is 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So you'd be there for 6 weeks,
okay.
then you get your 2 weeks with your family at the Isle of Lewis, where it's
Yeah.
not as awful.
Yeah. That's honestly not terrible. It's better than I thought.
Yeah, actually, it's not a bad setup. The people. So there are a few key players in this that we'll just brush past quick. So the first one is this isn't so much of a person, wasn't more like an organization. The Northern Lighthouse Board of Scotland.
Yeah.
So this is I think it's either a government or a government contractor that actually maintains all the lighthouses for Scotland.
So this is where you got like a lot of your information, right?
Yes. So actually, a lot of the information of this episode came from the official reports from the Northern Lighthouse Board.
Cool. Okay.
So, and they still operate to this day. They maintain over 200 lighthouses. Also, I think I mentioned this. All of their lighthouses were designed by this one architect and his descendants.
Yeah.
So my personal theory is they got some kind of machine cult thing going on.
It's like the stonemasons, but for just lighthouses and just in Scotland.
Yeah. It's like, how
That's funny as
dare.
hell.
So, I mean, like, my headcanon is that they execute people if they even dare question the architecture.
Hey man, I think the railing's like a little like askew, and that dude just marks.
This is heresy.
Yeah.
The machinations of the creators are good and true.
Throw him off the cliff into the ocean. That is so funny.
So that's the Northern Lighthouse Board. Then there's the 3 keepers who were actually at the lighthouse during the disappearances. So these are the 3 guys that ended up going missing.
Yeah, our protagonists.
Yeah, something like that.
More or less.
So the first one we have is James Ducat, who was the principal lighthouse keeper for Eilean Mor. He was kind of like the guy in charge. He was the most seasoned of the group. He was the most experienced. Born 11th of August, 1856, began to work for the board as a lighthouse keeper in 1878. So, a little under 25 years experience.
Oh, wow.
I think that's, 22 years?
Yeah, so veteran is accurate.
Yeah, so he was 22 years when he started, married to Mary Grierson in 1882. By the time of the disappearance, he had 22 years of with the Lighthouse Board. His longest stint on any lighthouse was, oh Jesus, I don't even know how to pronounce this. Oat Rins was out of Rins of Islay lighthouse for 7 years, 9 months.
Okay, wow.
I want you to picture staying at one lighthouse
For 7 years.
for 7 years.
Yeah, no, that's pretty rough.
And this man hasn't had one psychotic break.
This dude is dude's a beast.
So yeah. So there's James Ducat. Thomas Marshall was the second assistant lighthouse keeper at the lighthouse. Mm-hmm. He entered service in the board in 1896 at the age of 27. After a career as a sailor, so he used to be a sailor. Okay. 4 years as a lighthouse keeper, but obviously he had a lot of experience being out at sea.
Yeah.
Donald MacArthur was the occasional lighthouse keeper. So he was filling in for the first assistant lighthouse keeper, William Ross, who was at the time on sick leave. So this guy was basically his replacement until he recovered.
Oh, okay.
He has no record with the board that I could find.
Oh, so this is fairly new.
Yes. Joseph Moore was the relief lighthouse keeper was currently on the shore station at the Isle of, was it the Isle of...
Ross? Was that what it was?
Isle of Lewis, sorry.
Lewis, not Ross. My bad.
So he was off, right? Mm-hmm. Chain of events. Here's where we actually get into the mystery of what happened.
Oh, right.
So on December 26th, the crew of the Hesperus made landfall. The Hesperus was a lighthouse keeper ship, so it would travel between lighthouses, deliver supplies, deliver spare parts, deliver crew.
Mm-hmm.
They had made landfall for their usual 2-week shifts to drop off relief keeper Joseph Moore.
Okay.
When they did so, they had noticed that as they were approaching, the light was not on, which it should be. According to the Northern Lighthouse Board, standard operating procedure, that lighthouse has to be on 24/7, other than maintenance, right?
Uh-huh.
So the lighthouse was off. None of the signal flags were being raised. The shipmaster did not see any signs of life on the island. They tried hailing the lighthouse with flares and rockets. No response. So they made landfall and let Joseph Moore investigate the island and lighthouse itself. Everything was in order, more or less. There were a few things that were odd. Namely, the 3 people who were there are not there anymore. They're gone. But the actual lighthouse itself was in good order. All the doors were closed and properly secured, except for the kitchen door. The kitchen door was open.
Huh. That's really interesting, actually.
This is an important one. So each keeper is given a oilskin coat. That's basically a thick, waterproof coat. It's treated with oils so that water just slides right off of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of them were missing, except for the occasional keeper, MacArthur's, who, for some reason, he just didn't have it with him when he vanished. It was still there, which is odd. Yeah. Because that would suggest that he went outside without his oilskin. Yeah. Which you should never do.
No.
Especially in the North Atlantic.
Yeah, it's probably ice cold. Dude, that was a horrible idea.
Oh, yeah. The lighthouse itself was primed and ready to be lit, but it just wasn't.
Okay.
All the clocks had stopped because at the time you had to wind clocks manually and let them do that. So presumably they had been gone for at least 24 hours or so.
Wow. Okay.
At least. We'll get to that in a second.
That's wild. Okay.
It was noted that there was significant damage done to the west landing. The iron railing around the crane and railway that I mentioned earlier was completely ripped out of the concrete.
Wow. Okay.
Wait,
was this at the top or was this on the stairs going up?
So this was the west landing where the ships would actually dock.
Oh. Okay. Huh.
So.
Okay.
I had read somewhere. Now, don't quote me on this. I had read somewhere, it was either on the National Scottish Archives or in the report, but I can't find it. I had read that they actually had that marked down in the logbook, which suggests that it happened while the keepers were still on the island.
Okay.
I don't know where I read that. I don't even know if that's true. So take that as, with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
So that might have nothing to do with the actual disappearance itself. A 2,000-pound stone was dislodged from the cliff presumably by natural forces, and moved into the center of the pathway at the landing. So it's kind of blocking off the path. It was noted that an emergency life buoy attached to a railing 100 feet up the cliff was missing.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So a box of mooring rope was tipped over, and many of its contents were also missing. All of this was indicative of those violent waves that I had mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so like I'm sorry for being a little quiet, but I'm just like
yeah, you're good.
And like the more details you keep telling me, it really just seems like so like if I remember correctly, 2 of the coats were missing, but one of them was still there, right?
Yes, MacArthur's, the occasional keeper, his was still there.
So it feels as though like the 2 of them, the other 2 were outside during some kind of like they needed to go out when the weather was a little rough because they're like, oh man, we forgot something, we have to go out and like take care of it. And in the process of that, one of them, maybe over by the railing where it might have broken, they like fell in the water or something, and the other guy completely lost them, so he ran back inside to talk to the other guy whose coat was still there. And in the like in the quickness, like, oh god, we gotta go save him, he forgot to grab his coat maybe, and then they both went out and something happened with the weather and they never came back in. Maybe.
Alex, it's astounding you came to that conclusion, because we're going to get to that in a second.
Okay. I'm smart.
I'm not gonna spoil anything, but wow.
I'm gonna be completely honest. That was complete, like, just off the top of my head. I have not. This is just the me brain work good sometimes.
Oh, don't worry, we're gonna get to it. But yeah, all of this damage was indicative of those large 200-foot waves. They are often quite powerful, and the idea that they could rip an iron fence out of concrete is not that far off.
Mm-hmm.
James Moore, who was the relief keeper. Remarked that the damage. Remarked in any letter that the damage. He marked down all the damage, but noted that the men. There was no evidence that the men had actually perished as a result of it.
Oh yeah, they were just completely gone. Like they didn't have any evidence of like them
these
at all.
Guys. Okay. When they went missing, there was no evidence that there was no evidence of a struggle. There was no evidence of a fight. There was no evidence. They were just gone. It was like they just up and left.
Yeah. Very indicative of falling into water.
Yes. So there was a logbook. Every lighthouse keeps a logbook. The last entries in the lighthouse log were made on December 13th. But there was evidence that the crew was still present until the 15th.
Okay.
Mainly because part of being a lighthouse keeper was taking barometric data, weather reports, all that kind of stuff. And they could find the slates of all that data dated up to the 15th.
Okay.
And as well, there was evidence that the lighthouse was the light had actually seen maintenance up until the 15th.
All right. So they were working with like somewhat of a timetable. They had like some good idea.
Yes, it is, and I believe I mentioned that the 16th, December 15th was when the Archtor passed by and noted the absence of the light.
Yeah, which then caused the other ship to actually go visit and be like, "Hey, what
actually happened?" No.
Oh.
The Archtor had passed by, noted the light had extinguished, and when they passed it on, no action was taken. I guess it just never got to the proper authority.
Bureaucracy.
They had found out about this discrepancy during just their normal shift rotation.
That's crazy.
This was December the 26th.
So wait, so did that ship, the first one, actually did they report
the Archtor?
it? Did the Archtor actually report it, or did
they reported it?
So then
they reported it, and just nothing happened.
So just bureaucracy.
Pretty much. Also, bear in mind it's the 1900s.
No,
they had telegraph offices, but
they weren't
realistically
common. Like, well, I mean, no, they were common enough, but like that's a rough spot. It's not like, they could like it's not like they had a telegraph office on the island or anything where they can just dial.
Yeah,
them
they
up
couldn't just call the Northern Lighthouse Board and say, "Hey, your light went out."
Yeah.
That usually at that time, the most common way of relaying a message was just to get a dude on a horseback and hand deliver the letter.
What I'm curious. The Isle, what was the island that's close to it again? Where the relief guys were and the families.
Isle of Lewis.
How far is the Isle of Lewis? Like by boat ride? Do you happen to know how far it is from?
I believe I mentioned it was 21 miles west.
Okay, so it's like a bit of a trip.
It's a ride. It's a ride.
Okay. So I can understand how they're like, yeah, it takes a second to like fully get people and then put them on the boat and get the boat going. But even then, it was still a few days, right?
Yeah.
Like
maybe not a day, but.
Well, no, I mean like it took them a few days still to actually like what was the time period between the Archtor and the shift rotation? Like
the Archtor noticed the light had gone out the 15th.
And the shift rotation was the 19th, you said?
The 26th.
Oh my god.
This was out for, I think, about a week.
God, man.
A little over a week.
Jeez. That's insane.
Again, they would not have noticed or even reported this until Mor had actually went on for his shift.
Yeah. That's wild. Like, and the Archtor, like, made it to land, like, no problem. Like,
the Archtor did actually make it despite not having the guidance of the lighthouse.
That's crazy. That's wild.
Yeah. It's the 1900s, man. It's a lot of this stuff just slips through.
Yeah, man. Jeez.
So I have looked over evidence, or at least whatever I could find through the national records and the Northern Lighthouse Board, but I couldn't find any evidence of a particularly bad storm. I tried to find the actual logbook. I have not found any scans. I haven't found any, transcripts, nothing like that. So I don't think there's any storms in that time period that would cause something like this.
Yeah, but you never know. Because, like, the island is a bit further north, so maybe it just didn't quite reach the coast. And, like, so...
That could also be the case.
Mm-hmm.
Upon confirming no signs of life of any of the keepers, the Hesperus left Joseph Mor, as well as buoy master McDouglas, as well as two sailors, Lamont and Campbell, to restart and maintain the lighthouse until new keepers could be found.
Yeah.
So the Hesperus returned back to the mainland and sent a telegram all the way up to the Northern Lighthouse Board's main office. I actually do have the transcript of the telegram.
Oh, that's cool.
If you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Quote,
cool.
A dreadful accident has happened at Flannan's. The three keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and the Occasional, have disappeared from the island. I also like how MacArthur wasn't even mentioned by name. He's just the occasional. Like, oh shit, he died. Who cares?
Yeah, this jobber died. That's fucked up. Damn, bro.
On our arrival this afternoon, no sign of life was to be seen on the island. Fired a rocket, but no response was made. Managed to land Mor, who went up to the station but found no keepers there. The clocks were stopped, and other signs indicated that the accident must have happened about a week ago. Poor fellows they must have been, blown over the cliffs or drowned trying to secure a crane or something like that.
Yeah, so even they thought that, like, almost immediately.
Yes. Night coming on, we could not wait to make something as to their fate. I have left Mor, MacDonald, Buoymaster, and 2 seamen on the island to keep the light burning until you make other arrangements. Will not return to Oban until I hear from you. I have repeated this wire to Murhead. In case you are not at home, I will remain at the telegraph office tonight until it closes, if you wish to wire me.
Wow.
Master Hesperus.
That's really
cool. That was the shipmaster. He sent a message to the board, and they had it wired to the superintendent of the area, which was Robert Moorhead, or jeez, I don't know how to pronounce Scottish names.
It comes to experience.
So, after the incident, new lighthouse keepers were found, and the superintendent, as I mentioned, Robert Moorhead, launched a full investigation. Much of his findings are in this report. So I actually, as I mentioned, I found the actual report. Which is really awesome. But that actually was most of the evidence for this
like report
episode.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
The actual report that Robert Moorhead actually created.
All right.
He noted, I may state that, as Mor was naturally very much upset by the unfortunate occurrence and appeared very nervous.
Yeah, I would be. Dude, yeah, alright, stay on the island where 3 people just vanished. Like,
yeah.
Shit, dude.
It's like, how do you expect some guy to react when...
stay inside,
when you
bro.
land onto an island and you're like, yeah, I know 3 of your friends just drowned to death or died or, I don't know, they went missing. We're never going to see them again. But hey, can you, like, stay here and make sure everything works?
Yeah, do the exact same thing they did. Jeez.
It was also found that a gamekeeper named Robert Mackenzie was meant to check on the light from the coastline of the Isle of Lewis. So this guy's whole job was to just go up, like, I think once a week, just to check that the light was on. And I looked it up. I don't remember how much he was actually paid, but I think I ran the calculations to actually, like, see what his wages would be worth.
Oh boy.
In the modern day. And I think he was paid the modern equivalent to like $10,000 a year.
Wow.
Just to go check the light.
Sheesh.
And miraculously, he failed to do that. They would have known about this way sooner if he had just done his job. Wow. So, he failed to report it. He probably got fired.
Jeez, bro.
So
if I'm getting paid $10,000, wait, is it
just
like
to go check the lights on?
Is it like a wage or is it like a contract? Like, here's $10K, go do the whole job.
I think it's contract. So like annually, he'd be paid, whatever.
Yeah.
But so that's the actual occurrence. So just to recap, we have 3 lighthouse keepers missing, no evidence as to their fates, no evidence as to what happened. We just have a lighthouse, some screwed up railing, and 3 missing lightkeepers.
Mm-hmm.
So now we get into the theories. This is the fun part.
This is the fun part.
So a lot of people do attribute it to the natural occurrences that we mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's funny, you know how I mentioned how you were not far off?
Yeah.
In the actual official report done by the superintendent, his exact theory was basically, I think it was Dumont or hold on, let me get the names again.
Yeah, no, you're good.
The
One
other
of the two,
the two
with
senior
the
lighthouse keepers.
Yeah.
Ducat and Marshall.
There we go. Okay.
During some inclement weather, went out to secure that box of mooring rope that I had mentioned.
Yeah.
They went out to secure it. They had ended up in a bit of trouble. They were in a perilous situation. MacArthur went out to save them, and the waves just took them.
Yeah. And
that, so
the like life buoy was also missing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe they, in the efforts to try and use that, either that also came loose and fell, because it's possible, because the weather's crazy, but maybe MacArthur tried to use that, and then they, like, in the efforts to try and use MacArthur, right? He was the third one.
MacArthur was the occasional that went out to assist Ducat and Marshall.
So maybe after seeing the two of them fall in, like, he tried to use it, and then he also ended up falling in because the waves took him too. Which is that's so horrifying to think about.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh my lord.
Yeah, it's the conclusion that the investigation came to. So that's what a lot of people think. I don't want to spoil it, but it's kind of what I personally think happened. Mm-hmm. Which is still terrifying that the ocean just took 3 people.
Yeah, it just decided you're all gonna die now. That's horrible.
Yeah, pretty much. They just got unlucky. There was also some theories suggesting during the investigation that the wind had just blown them over the side of the cliff.
Yeah, I feel like that also just falls under the umbrella of weather hazard, like or ocean hazard, nature, the nature.
Well, like, I want you to think, how hazardous or how powerful winds you have to just blow a full-grown human.
Oh, I mean, Scotland is known to be like mega windy. Like, it's a big thing.
That's fair. That's fair.
In Scotland, it's so much so that, like, the mythology even has like I know like there's I don't mean to sound like I'm thinking that Gaelic is because it's called Gaelic because there's gales, but there's a thing with like gales, like the wind gales in Scotland. I think I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know that that's a thing.
Yeah, no, it's we actually do go into a little bit of a here. But let me get through the rational.
Yeah, the rest of the rational.
Rational. So another theory that a lot of people come up with is murder. It was suggested that one of the members of the crew may have just gone insane from the stress and from just being out in the Atlantic and just being so isolated that one of them broke and started killing people.
It's possible.
It is, but there's really no evidence. There would have been blood. Okay. It was actually one day I was driving home, and I actually sat there and I thought about it. Like, okay, if I were one of these keepers, how would I kill 2 people without leaving any trace that I killed them? and the best I could come up with is, okay, maybe MacArthur was sleeping and he just suffocated him, and then
he dumped him.
Yeah, and then
he fell in.
The other guy was outside. I tried to sit there and I couldn't find any rational way for that to actually work.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it could straight up just be that, like, the 2 of them like how we were talking about before, where the two guys with jackets were out there, and like he just pushed the guy off the cliff, and then he ran back and was like, "There's an emergency! He fell off. We gotta do something." And the guy's like, "Where?" And then he managed to push him off too, because he dragged him outside like quickly and hurriedly.
Yes.
I mean, it's a bit of a stretch because I don't know the layout of the place, so like I don't know verbatim how it could have happened.
Here's another problem, though. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't make sense for one of them to just snap.
Yeah, it's a bit like of a stretch to just have someone suddenly go crazy.
I could understand maybe MacArthur, who was an occasional, who didn't do this often, maybe kind of losing it. But bear in mind, there's two other adult men on the island who work very rigorous manual labor jobs. I'm pretty sure two guys can overpower one dude.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make sense because the other two were a lot more experienced. It just wouldn't make sense for them to snap and decide, okay, time to kill.
Uh-huh.
So that doesn't make sense. But if you thought that didn't make sense, here comes some more fun ones. Aliens. Some people just suggest that aliens came and abducted 3 lighthouse keepers for no reason.
You gotta love it. I mean, it's always a possibility, I suppose.
It is. There's no evidence to prove it, but there's no evidence to disprove it. Like, that's
always the alien argument, isn't it?
There's no reason it couldn't be the case.
Why not?
But
that's fun though. Those theories.
It also just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, not at all.
It's fun.
But isn't it fun to believe?
When I was young and I had first learned about this case, that was my assumption.
Oh, I mean, come on. I mean, I thought of it too.
Totally the aliens.
I thought of it too, but I didn't say anything.
So that was my assumption. I was like, it's totally the aliens. Can't be anything other than the aliens.
What's that? A hiker vanished on the trail? Bigfoot, bro. It had to have
totally been. Aliens. Totally the skinwalkers.
Bigfoot alien team up crossover event.
It's like an AEW match. The Bigfoot and the aliens, they just show up and start suplexing the guy.
Fear, they jumped. They jumped him in the backstage. That's phenomenal.
Bigfoot's getting out a metal chair.
He's got a steel chair.
Oh, what's this? E.T. with a kendo stick?
The kendo stick. That's fantastic. The ref's not looking. Oh, that's so good. So yeah, Aliens is fun.
Aliens is always a fun one. To be fair, there are some case files that we're gonna get to eventually where, yes, I totally think it was aliens, and you can't convince me it wasn't.
I can't wait to discuss.
But we're not there yet.
No, we got a long road.
The second one that actually kind of makes a little more sense than the aliens was, you mentioned the folklore.
Yeah.
The Kelpies got them.
Aw, dude.
So, for those unfamiliar with good old Scottish folklore, there are just so many fun stories. So
some really screwed up ones too.
What's up?
Some really screwed up ones too. Some of the monsters in Celtic mythology are really messed up.
Well, so some people suggest that it was this one particular one called the Kelpies. The Kelpies are these spirits that tend to stick around like waterways, so rivers, streams, and whatnot. That basically they either appear in the form of a horse or a beautiful woman. So I think like it's dependent on their target. I think it's like a child or a traveler, they'll appear as like a very calm pony, so that people will look at it and go, "Oh, sweet, free horse! I don't gotta walk anymore." They'll mount the horse, and as it turns out, it's a Kelpie. It'll just basically trap them and just run off and just take them to wherever their lair is, right?
Yeah,
and do whatever with them.
You're now stuck to me, so time to drown.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Obviously, for women, it's to lure in unsuspecting men, and it's kind of like harpies or mermaids or whatever.
Or siren too, yeah.
Or siren, yes. There you go. Thank you. It's another interesting one, although believe it or not, this actually has less proof than the aliens. Because usually Kelpies tend to stick around more landlocked, waterways, so like rivers, locks, ponds, streams. There's no real folklore suggesting that they operate in the oceans, especially islands this far away.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a fun one.
Yeah, I mean, mythology is always cool because like there's some kind of basis for it. So since like these are stories that are told for a while, where it's like, as fun as Aliens is a very like recent idea, or in terms of the grand history of things, whereas mythology, it's like people have been talking about stories like this for a long time, and yeah, they could all just be like stories, but like I'm sure there's some basis to some mythological stories. Like
ultimately, I'm sure somebody goes missing. Yeah, there's gonna be a reason for it.
Yeah, it's like how like stuff like Mothman too, where it's like I'm sure they saw something. Was it Mothman? Yeah. I don't know, but they definitely saw something. It freaked them out.
Well, even on the topic of like where mythology comes from, right? I remember I'd actually done a report when I was doing some classes for college in my Japanese class. A lot of Japanese folklore was disproven around the I think like the 1900s or 1800s. A college professor had actually decided, hey, I'm going to actually sit here and dedicate my academic career to investigating all these folkloric tales that my country still believes in. And he found that a lot of those tales just evolved from very natural threats.
Yeah.
That basically people, to fill in the gaps of what they don't know, would come up with these tales to say, hey, this particular thing, stay away from it.
Yeah.
A lot of it revolves around things like the water. Oh, don't go near the water. Don't go into bogs or whatever, because then the evil spirits get you.
Yeah, well, it's straight up. It's just the old world version of like, you ever have your parents, like after you eat food, their parents are like, don't go in the water, you'll get a cramp and you'll be in trouble. Like it's basically just the old world version of that, where it's like, don't go in the water or the sea monster will kill you.
Demon.
Yeah.
It's
a lot easier to get your kid to not do something when they're afraid of like a demon.
Exactly. That's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, seriously.
Another theory are a whole slew of ancient curses.
Scotland seems like, that sounds right. Cursed area.
Yeah. So, you know how I mentioned farmers would bring their sheep to graze?
Uh-huh.
There was always a folklore thing, right, where no one ever stays on the islands overnight. They think if you do, something bad is going to happen.
Okay.
So, the islands were always said to be cursed in some way. There was actually this is gonna be good. So you know how I mentioned the logbooks? There was evidence in some of the logbooks that was written down. Basically, entries written by the crew there. On the 12th, Marshall had reported in the log severe winds, the likes of which I have never seen before in 20 years. Ducat has gone very quiet, and MacArthur has started to cry.
Oh, wow.
On the 13th, a violent storm has started, so violent the three men began to pray.
Yeah.
And then the final entry on the 15th stated, storm ended, sea calm, God is over all.
Wow, that's the last entry, and then they all vanished.
Yes.
That's so weird. That's so
cool, right?
Cool.
Do you want to hear something cooler?
Yeah.
That's all horse shit.
Okay.
So,
damn. I got excited.
So it was let me see if I can find it. Okay. So a independent author by the name of Mike Dash had done a investigation into these logbooks and found that whole account in which I just gave you was most likely falsified. I had heard somewhere it was actually written by basically the equivalent of a tabloid or a pulp magazine to basically, spice up the story to attract more people, right? Because if you write a story saying, oh yeah, 3 random people just went missing, that's, the waves took them, that's not as exciting.
Ah, okay. So we had some media embellishment.
Yeah, that's basically what it was. Some media company at the time just said, hey, this is boring, let's make it cool. so they just straight up made up logbooks or log entries.
3 people died, and they're just like, yeah, how do we make this more interesting?
Yeah, how do we make this marketable?
Damn.
But also, with that being said, that's just not what logbooks are used for. Logbooks are meant for, like I mentioned, the weather reports, barometric data, reporting damage to the lighthouse, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, so
it's not for personal entries of the keepers. They have diaries for that. They have journals.
Yeah,
they can write that in their own little book.
Immediately after reading this media thing, anyone worth their salt was like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would they write that in the log? Yeah, okay. All right, I get that.
it's that whole account, while very cool, and even me reading it sent chills up my spine.
It was cool, yeah.
It's cool, but it's fake.
It's horseshit, yeah.
So that's really it when it comes to the theories. I think we can both agree the most likely occurrence was, like the official report stated, they went out to go secure a box. Ducat and Marshall went out. They needed help. They found themselves in, as a man once said, unjustifiably in a position I'd rather not be in. They called for help from MacArthur, and the waves just took them.
Damn. Yeah, so for our first episode, I think this was fun. It's very
it's a fun one.
Yeah, it's pretty explainable. I'm sure that as we go on, we'll get into more genuinely what the hell happened kind of scenarios. But I think this is a good jumping off point for this kind of podcast. I like this one.
Yeah, I'll admit this particular case file. It's kind of sad coming back, 10 years later, and actually doing a somewhat legitimate investigation into it. Yeah, and finding out it's not evil sorcery.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, I feel like a lot of things have that problem, but there's also I know of, and I remember hearing some, there's definitely stories out there where it's what the hell even happened?
Oh, I have a couple planned. Don't you worry. Yeah. I have some interesting disappearances.
So yeah, that's about it, right?
Yes, that will conclude our episode for today. Everyone, thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was awesome. I had a great time.
Everyone, have a good night.
Bye.